Thank you very much. I'm just trying to find how to share my screen at the moment. Have you got it?
Do you see it on the bottom of Zoom? There should be a share screen arrow in the middle.
I've got it.
Perfect.
Right. How to fix a broken planet. An emergency healthcare plan for planet Earth. Now, among the world's many pressing health needs, the most urgent of all is a plan for human survival. At present, no nation or international body has one. What we currently have is a chaotic road to avoidable disaster, driven by 10 vast interconnected threats, which are all the result of human activity. These threats have been carefully documented by science over more than 50 years. They show that the human capacity to inflict mass harm on ourselves, on our health and on our well-being, and that of the planet as a whole, has increased exponentially since World War II. Collectively, they menace the future of human civilization and certainly its health, well-being, and its ability to survive. They are all driven at core by the same 4 factors: overpopulation, overconsumption, overpollution, and money. The science is in. We've wiped out 2/3 of the world's large animals. Several studies show that extinction rates are now more than 1,000 times above the normal level. Humans and our livestock make up 96% of all the life on land. We are wiping out forests, wetlands, grasslands, and ocean life at rates never before seen. And we are creating new deserts, toxic and uninhabitable regions. We are, in effect, collapsing the Earth's life support system, the very thing that keeps us alive and healthy. We're losing fresh water, topsoil, fish, forests, and other key resources at appalling rates. Human consumption of material resources is skyrocketing. Back in the 1970s, it was 29 billion tonnes a year. That's for all of us. It's risen to 101 billion tonnes a year last year, and it's on track to reach 170 billion tonnes by 2050. All those resources come at a huge cost to our own health and our well-being because of the damage and the pollution that they cause. There is already a world water crisis, and it can only grow more severe. There is a crisis in our farming soils, which nobody wants to recognise. We are felling forests and clearing land as if there were no tomorrow, as may very well become the case. We are killing large parts of the oceans. And we now use an entire year's worth of the Earth's resources every 7 months. We are poisoning everyone and everything on the planet every day, including our children. Our chemical emissions at over 200 billion tonnes a year are our biggest and worst impact on the planet, its health, and on our own health. You see my talk on this at the last Real Truth About Health conference last year. Human chemical emissions are 5 times larger than our climate emissions, and they kill, according to the World Health Organization, 13.7 million people every single year. That's 1 in 4 human deaths are now attributable to the chemical mess that we've unleashed. They cause about 600 million years of lost human life every year. So those are people who are just sickened by this, not necessarily people who are dead from it. This is the worst act of preventable homicide in human history. Now, the death toll is twice that of World War II, for example. Yet few people and few governments seem serious about stopping it. The flood of chemicals, nerve poisons especially, is damaging our children's brains. And this may be a reason why human IQ is now falling steadily worldwide. and brain diseases are on the increase. And the brain is the most chemically sensitive organ in our body. It gets hit by everything that's in our environment, everything we inhale, everything we eat or ingest, the stuff that comes through our skin. You can't avoid these things. They're getting into us all the time. We are constructing weapons that can better obliterate us many times over. World spending on new weapons reached $2.24 trillion a year this year. That's more than a quarter of the total global healthcare budget. So we're spending nearly a quarter as much as we spend on health on better ways to kill ourselves. The doomsday clock was recently reset at 90 seconds to midnight, which is the highest risk level since Hiroshima. Now, even a small nuclear war involving, say, 50 to 100 warheads would kill up to 2 billion people in the famines that followed the nuclear winter. So even non-competent nations who are right out of it would be very badly affected by this. All countries, in fact, would experience food and health crises if somebody pressed the nuclear trigger in however small a fashion. Now, 2/3 of the nations of the earth want nukes banned, but 1/3 of nations want to keep them. Most women want nukes banned, but quite a few men want to keep them. We are shaping a climate that will render the earth largely uninhabitable within a few generations. Climate emissions are still rising strongly, despite all the talk about containing them, about getting back to zero. They will take us past +2 degrees by 2050, maybe as early as 2030, and +4 degrees by 2100. Now, as an agricultural writer, I can tell you, at 3 to 4 degrees, world food and water supplies will collapse. And scientific predictions suggest that fewer than 1 billion human beings, that's 1 in 10, will actually survive. We humans are triggering a vast number of tipping points, which are causing the Earth itself to yield more carbon emissions. And there is absolutely no stopping these. There's nothing we can do to prevent them once they're underway. Most frightening of all are the 5 trillion tons of methane gas, which is locked into tundra, peat swamps, and the seabed, and is now starting to vent. In the Arctic oceans, the Canadian tundra, and so on, the gas is rising, and it's coming into the atmosphere, and methane has 30 to 80 times the heat-trapping power of carbon dioxide. So this is a very deadly development. We are building dangerous new technologies over which society has no control. You may have seen the headlines in the last few days about artificial intelligence, how within a matter of years, it is likely that it will become impossible for us to tell the difference between an artificially generated figure and a real human being. So all sorts of words can be put in people's mouths without us, the audience, knowing what is going on. Like coal and industrial agriculture before them, artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, biotechnology, and global surveillance have the potential to do terrible damage if used excessively or malignantly. And at present, there is no way for society to control these monsters. They are off the leash and they are coming to get us. Several of them, like nanopollution and gain-of-function biotech, have dire consequences for our health and for that of the planet. Now, we currently throw away nearly half our food, and we ruin the planet trying to grow more. This means that half our farmers, up to half our farmers, are feeding nobody. It's going to landfill. The present food system is not sustainable because it is destroying the very soils, the water, the climate, and the ecology on which it depends. However, global demand for food is expected to double by the 2060s. So food security is in fact the Achilles heel of modern civilization, something which very few governments appear to grasp. Well, they grasp it in Africa, but not in the West. There is an urgent need to completely rethink the way we humans produce food. I mean, agriculture, wonderful technology, much though we love it, it's a Stone Age technology. We need new ways to produce food that are sustainable and climate-proof. The world population has tripled in the last 75 years. Every year, we try to cram another 80 million people into lifeboat Earth, and this is driving all of the other threats. However, human fertility is declining. This is the good news. Fertility is declining in most countries on Earth, thanks to women. Peak population of about 10 billion people could possibly be reached in the 2060s, and a slow decline begin thereafter. However, 1/3 of a billion people are now fleeing from overcrowded countries into more stable ones every year. And there are warnings that the human tide could exceed 1 billion. So there are 100 million refugees who are displaced by war and famine and drought and so forth. And on top of that, there's about 250 million people who are just simply seeking a better, safer life than what they know is happening in their own countries. Now, the point is that when human migration gets up to 1 billion, there is no country on Earth whose borders can sustain such a tsunami. Somehow, we have to get the human population back in line with what the Earth itself can realistically carry in the long run. There have been 7 pandemics, as I'm sure you're aware, since the year 2000, and there is mounting concern now about an 8th, the potential transfer of avian flu to human beings. All these pandemics are the result of human behavior. Overpopulation, mass travel, overcrowded cities, dense gathering places like schools, sports arenas, cruise liners, and nightclubs all help to spread disease. So it's our very habits that are the main driver of pandemic disease. Science is also persisting in carrying out some very dangerous and foolish experiments designed to artificially create more deadly viruses. And these are without societal or ethical oversight. We are now unleashing a new plague, usually from a ruined ecosystem, every 2 to 3 years, and spreading it worldwide like wildfire. 90 new diseases have in fact crossed from animals to people in the last 75 years, although of course not all of these became pandemic. The World Health Organization warns that bigger and worse plagues than COVID are likely. And collectively, the world is far from doing enough to prevent them. And we lie, constantly and continually, to ourselves about it all. The fossil fuels sector has established purpose-built lie factories, and every year spends billions of dollars poisoning the well of public information. Lying and spreading confusion about the climate and the environment, and other corporate sectors are copying them. Media organizations that specialize in spreading lies have arisen. They have discovered that misinformation is a great way to make money, because there are large audiences of people who, for whatever reason, prefer lies to truth. And this is attracting corporate advertisers who are thus paying for the lies to be spread further and faster. Now, all of this is polluting civil debate in democracies and autocracies alike, around the world and on social media, leading to widespread confusion in the populace and paralysis in government. The decline in human intelligence means that more and more citizens are unable to distinguish between truth and fiction. This is undermining democracy and assuring bad government. The inability to tell truth from reality means that more and more humans are unfit for survival, because they simply do not understand what is going on or how to fix it. Instead, they repose their faith in utter nonsense. So for humanity, misinformation could become as deadly in the long run as a nuclear war or climate change, a point which is insufficiently understood by governments or society at large. Now, none of these are the actions of a wise or a healthy species, or even maybe an intelligent one. A creature that wanted to survive would not devote most of its energy and most of its wealth to activities that undermine its health and its chances of survival. Yet humans today are doing just that. Our governments and our corporations seem paralyzed, unable to grasp the magnitude of the overwhelming, interlinked risks that are engulfing us. They certainly lack the essential skills to do so. As a result, humanity is just spinning our wheels instead of getting on with solving our problems. The 10 megathreats that I have listed are all connected. They cannot be separated. They all have solutions. Now, that's the important point. That's the good news. We know how to solve all of these things, but they must be solved all together at the same time. Solving them one at a time will not work, and there are some solutions of one threat that will make other threats worse. We have to avoid that. Now, as I said, all of them are consequences of the sheer scale of the human enterprise: overpopulation, overconsumption, overpollution, and money are the chief drivers. Mostly they stem from the 101 billion tonnes of resources that we now devour to support our lifestyle. So that's 12 tonnes of stuff that every single one of us on Earth uses every year to support that lifestyle. And the damage this process is causing to the health of the entire planet and ourselves. Now, the good news is that solutions to all these threats already exist, and that's why I wrote How to Fix a Broken Planet. So that people will know that complex problem, though it may seem, it is amenable to solution. And so people will also know that there is a lot that we can each do in our own lives as individuals, as well as members of a larger society. These threats must all be solved in ways that do not generate fresh perils or make other threats worse. We have the brains and we have the technology to save ourselves. The bad news is we do not have the governments, the leadership, or the will to do so. No government on Earth has a plan for overcoming these risks and securing the human future, as the Council for the Human Future has warned. Most governments and many people are not aware that such a threat or such a need exists. So poorly do they understand the messages that science has been delivering to them over the last 50 years, and so effectively have selfish interest managed to mislead, confuse, and frustrate action. In the book, I explain the scientific understanding of these risks, but more importantly, I list all the main solutions which governments, companies, and individuals can take in their work and in their own lives to make ours a safer, healthier, and more sustainable world. This amounts to a first draft for a world plan of action for human survival. Now, it isn't the complete answer. No short book could provide that. And I hasten to add, these are not my ideas. They are those of scientists worldwide, the best scientists, who have thought deeply about these issues over decades. It is therefore a summary, an outline of what the world's wisest minds now consider we must do together in order to survive. It shows that thinking and acting our way out of the biggest crisis ever to face humanity in the million years of its history is entirely possible. Furthermore, it is positive. It encourages hope, prosperity, healing, and opportunity. Among the several hundred solutions proffered for policymakers, governments, companies, groups, and individuals, here are my top dozen, just as examples. They should not surprise anyone who has considered our situation objectively. First of all, we need an Earth System Treaty, addressing all the catastrophic risks and open to everybody, not just nations, but every person to sign. An Earth System Treaty is a legal compact, a legal instrument signed by nations and every willing individual that commits all of us to work for a safe, healthy, habitable planet for our children and their grandchildren. It's a planet where humans live within the rational, safe boundaries defined by science, not the dangerous, toxic, unplanned world defined by greedy, uncaring enterprises. It is an agreement to work together to overcome each of the catastrophic threats that are the result of our own actions, but whose consequences now cannot be avoided. There is already, since 2021, a United Nations Treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. So far, 92 countries have signed it, and a further 68 have ratified it or agreed to it. But 70 countries, including all the nuclear powers, still cling to their support for potential human annihilation. This is not good for our health. Those who study the issue of nuclear weapons are agreed that if the world has them, it will use them sooner or later. Already, the major nuclear powers are trying to convince themselves that the limited use of nukes is possible without escalating into a full-blown world holocaust. This is a dangerous fantasy because there have been absolutely scores of nuclear mistakes made in the last 70 years to testify that mistakes happen. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists has set the doomsday clock at 90 seconds to midnight, and that's the highest danger level ever. And that is because of recent advances in nuclear weapons technology and the growing conviction among the warrior class that they can be safely used. Quite simply, if humanity is to survive a civilization-shattering conflict during this century and potential annihilation, then every country on Earth must agree to eliminate these weapons and all their technology. There is no intermediate position. 3, an end to the use of fossil fuels to stem both climate change and global poisoning. Now, leading climate scientists now consider that humanity must end its use of all fossil fuels. That's oil, coal, gas, tar sands, you name it, by 2030, or face an out-of-control climate running to a hothouse Earth. A hothouse Earth is an Earth that we cannot inhabit. Gradual reform and slow transition will not work. Current greenhouse policies are far from what is needed in almost all nations. So without a goal of ending fossil fuel use, the soaring costs of climatic turbulence will destroy the world economy and kill millions. However, a bonus from eliminating fossil fuels is that the largest source of poisons on the planet, the one that's killing 14 million people a year, will also be eliminated. So much of the sickness that is discussed at this conference, the cause of it will be removed. Thus, ending the use of fossil fuels is the greatest public health measure we could possibly take, greater even than supplying clean water to everyone. It would represent the biggest advance in human health and well-being in history, and it needs to be considered in that light as well as fixing the climate. And furthermore, it is entirely feasible. Clean energy, green chemistry, zero waste, green oil, hydrogen, and plant-based medicines are already available and can replace fossil fuels in most applications, whatever the oil lobby may be telling you. A circular world economy, which wastes nothing and reuses everything, is the answer to the looming scarcity of key resources, Now, for most of our history, we humans recycled our wastes, nutrients especially. I'm a Homeric scholar, and Odysseus in the Odyssey, basically when he got home at the end of the Trojan War, he walked past his old dog who was sitting on the dung heap outside the door of his house. This is 3,000 years ago, right? But there was a dung heap outside which contained all the kitchen waste and the crop waste, things that people threw away. And every year they forked that back onto the fields that grew their food for the next year, onto the olive trees and things like that. So people have been recycling nutrients for a long time. In the 20th century, we stopped doing that. We forgot how to recycle. We have got to learn it again. When the human population begins to shrink in the middle of this century, there will never be a need to open another mine. Think about that for a moment, because every single mineral and source of energy that we need will be available in the waste stream. And you'll be able to extract it from the waste stream far cheaper than you can get it from digging a hole in the ground. So we have to re-extract and reuse all of the minerals and building materials and things like that. And it's already happening. I mean, your smartphone is recycled. The 50 or 60 minerals in that smartphone are being reused. It happens to your aluminium drink can. All of those things. Let's just apply that principle to everything that we use, and then we can live in harmony with the earth. Furthermore, as we recycle more, we move our economy out of its focus on producing material goods and into a focus on ideas. That is the creative economy, where jobs shift from making things to doing things and imagining things. The human mind is inexhaustible, right? So there's no end to the creative economy, whereas a material economy, there's an end when the things it uses run out, when the timber runs out, or when the oil or coal runs out, or the metals run out. The creative economy uses far less energy. It causes less pollution and sickness. It provides greater happiness and quality of life. It lifts us out of the grubby industrial existence that we've had for the last 100 years to a healthier, more satisfying plane. Likewise, renewable food for everyone, which will sustain all of humanity, and it will dramatically reduce the threat of war, because 2/3 of all wars basically are fought as a result of arguments over food, land, and water. That's what's going on in Africa today. The renewable food revolution is going to be bigger and more exciting even than the renewable energy revolution. It's going to catch on faster. It's going to employ far more people, and it's going to engage people's enthusiasm and interest. And these are some examples of people's concepts for the renewable food revolution. It has 3 legs to it, because we can't go on using the Stone Age system called agriculture. First of all, we have to go back to regenerative agriculture. That is a farming system that restores, repairs, and cares for the environment in which it exists. Secondly, we need urban food production. And that is a system that takes all the nutrients and all the water that are currently being wasted by our huge cities. And bear in mind that there is no city on earth that can actually feed itself. Basically turns those nutrients and water back into renewable, climate-proof food, so that the cities end up largely feeding themselves. And finally, deep ocean aquaculture. Now, this is a new technology, and it's just coming in. But basically the mass farming of sea plants and fish in very large-scale ocean ranches away from the coasts can provide an inexhaustible source of nutrition for humanity, one that doesn't pollute, one that doesn't poison the oceans, unlike coastal aquaculture, which does concentrate nutrients and chemicals close to the coast, and it poisons the water column. Deep ocean aquaculture does not cause those problems. It's becoming more and more feasible, and there are some wonderful ideas out there for how we do this. The deep oceans can supply at least 1/3 of the food that humanity needs. So each of these methods, regenerative agriculture, urban food production, and deep ocean agriculture, can provide 1/3 of the world's food needs, sustainably and in largely climate-proof conditions. And that is going to lead to a dramatic improvement in human health, because there's going to be a much higher proportion of fresh, nutritious plant foods in the diet. Now, if we don't need to farm any longer, we can turn half the earth back into wild wilderness. A Stewards of the Earth plan for the rewilding of half the earth, as suggested by E.O. Wilson, run by farmers and Indigenous people, and that there's 1 billion small farmers at the moment who are being kicked off their farms by the big supermarket chains and industrial food combines. And there's 500 million Indigenous people around the world who simply want to put their environments back. So there's 1.5 billion people ready to do this. All we need to do is fund them. If we implement the renewable food revolution that I've described to you, and we grow 2/3 of our food in the cities and the deep oceans, we can return more than half of the world's land area to forests, wetlands, grasslands, and woodlands. And that is going to help to reverse the 6th extinction of wild animals, insects, and birds. It is a complete win-win. To manage this transition, we can make use of the skills and the wisdom of 1 billion small farmers who are currently being destroyed by the industrial food system, and 500 million Indigenous people worldwide who love and understand their own environment. So instead of wasting $2 trillion a year on bigger, better, nastier weapons to kill ourselves, we could pay these farmers and native people to repair the damage to global landscapes caused by agriculture, climate, and mindless development.